Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second day of the World Migratory Bird Day celebration webinar series. I am Vivian Fu, Communication Officer of the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership Secretariat. Welcome all. So before we get started officially, I would like to raise, as I said, every time there are a few notices for you to participate in today's webinar. So firstly, during the webinar, it will be helpful to mute your mic and so that it won't be disturbing the speakers. And secondly, please type your questions to the speakers in the chat box. You can find a speech bubble icon at the bottom of the Zoom app, and we will collect these questions and deliver to the moderator and the speakers. And lastly, we are live streaming this webinar on the Facebook. So please feel free to share the Facebook page to the others. And this is today's rundown. So I will firstly share the video of a welcoming remarks by our Chief Executive, Mr. Doug Watkins. And after that, we will have the presentations from Mr. Philipp Maleko from the Wildlife Conservation Society Arctic Beringia Regional Program, and also Mr. Iwan Fabrianto from the EKSAI Foundation. After that, we will have the Q&A section, and we will also have some announcement for the coming events. So today, this is our presenters, and we also have an interpreter, Rajil Rihandini from EKSAI Foundation, who can help with the Q&A sections later on. So without further ado, I would like to share the pre-recorded welcoming speech from our Chief Executive, Mr. Doug Watkins. So Sarwon, please could you share the video?
Happy World Migratory Bird Day. I'm Doug Watkins, the Chief Executive of the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership Secretariat. Welcome to the October events to celebrate and express our appreciation for birds and nature. Together with the Convention on Migratory Species and joining the other flyways, the African Eurasian Waterbird Agreement and Environment for the Americas. World Migratory Bird Day is a global campaign to raise awareness, appreciation and love for migratory birds and to take action to conserve them. Although we still have travel restrictions due to COVID, we've seen in past events that there are innovative activities to make the best to reach out to the general public. For example, the World Migratory Bird Day virtual choir song, the online trivia, writing and drawing competitions and art exhibitions. This year, we are continuing to adapt to the new normal, but it won't stop us from working with our 39 partners of EAFP to promote and conserve migratory waterbirds and wetlands. COVID will not stop the birds from migrating, and they are still facing threats such as habitat loss and degradation, urbanization, pollution, illegal hunting, and invasive species. We are also continuing in the same vein to celebrate World Migratory Bird Day 2021 through online events and activities which you can also be part of. For the October events, the EAFP Secretariat and other EAFP collaborators are bringing you a series of online events, including webinars, a puppet show for people of all ages, and the global social media campaign to sing and dance like a bird. At this year's World Migratory Bird Day theme, Sing, Fly, Soar Like a Bird, says, as birds continue to sing, fly and soar along our flyways, they continue to remind us of our connection to the planet, the environment, wildlife and each other. We hope you will enjoy World Migratory Bird Day and join us to raise voices for migratory bird conservation. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot I muted. For those who are first time to to hear about the EAFP. The East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership is a partnership for 39 partners, and we are aiming to conserve the migratory water birds and their habitats, as well as the livelihood of the local communities in the East Asian Australasian Flyway. Next, now I would like to welcome our first speaker, Mr. Philipp Maleko from the Wildlife Conservation Society Arctic Beringia Regional Program, who will bring us to Russia Far East, the breeding ground that many shorebirds are from. And Philip is he received his master's degree at the University of Florida, studying the breeding ecology of the Nordmann's Greenshank and the common Greenshank. So today he is also bringing us about his update of the team's new research, for us for this webinar. So because Philip was in the field before, so to play safe, he did a pre-recorded recording for his presentation, but he is also here today with us and answering questions. So yeah, a reminder for you is if you have questions, please also leave them in the chat box. So Sarah, please, can you share the video, please?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending our talk, The Importance of Shasti Bay from Bottom's Cry in the Russian Far East to both Nordmann's Greenshank and common redshank. Now, as you well know, the East Asian Australasian Flyway is the largest migratory pathway in the world. It encompasses Alaska, Russia, and Mongolia to the north as the main breeding grounds for most species. China, the Koreas, and Japan as the main staging and stopover grounds for species along migration, as well as Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand as the main overwintering grounds. Fortunately, the East Asian Australasian Flyway is experiencing an unprecedented decline in shorebird abundance, with populations declining anywhere from 5 to 9% each year. Of the 50 or so shorebird species found throughout the Flyway, 12 are under threat of extinction. Now, the Russian Far East plays a critical role in regulating shorebird abundance, as it is the main breeding grounds for most species. As such, it is necessary to protect key areas, not only to restore shorebird populations, but also to prevent other negative anthropogenic disturbances from continuously derailing shorebird populations in the Flyway. As such, we decided to study shorebirds in the southwestern corner of the Sea of Okhotsk in a coastal lagoon known as Shasti Bay, translated as the Bay of Happiness. Here, we first studied Nordmann's greenshanks. Greenshanks are a rare and endangered shorebird with a global population of anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 individuals, making them one of the rarest shorebirds in the world. Nordmann's greenshanks are nesting endemic to the Russian Far East, but very little is known about their breeding ecology. The first and only individual to study Nordmann's greenshank breeding ecology before our study was Vitaly Andreevich Nechayev, who studied them on Sakhalin Island, Chaivo Bay in 1976. Here, Vitaly Andreevich was able to find 5 nests and learned that the species is the only shorebird in the world to build their own nests in trees. Unfortunately, since that time, Nordmann's greenshanks have all but ceased to breed on Sakhalin Island. This is due to several factors, mostly due to oil and gas exploration, the development of human settlements, as well as hunting and poaching by local inhabitants. Within Shasti Bay, most of our study was located in the northwest corner, between the Zimnik River and Silver Creek. We chose this area because it had large forests and inland bogs where the species were thought to nest, coastal meadow where they might breed rear young, as well as intertidal mudflat where they would forage. And this study occurred during the 2019, 2020, and 2021 summer breeding season. Our first phase of research was understanding more about Nordmann's greenshank breeding phenology. Birds arrived in the middle of May and began nesting in the beginning of June. The first hatching events occurred the 24th of June, but continued until the first days of July. Brood rearing started from the day of hatching until mid-August, and southward migration for non-breeding individuals started in the beginning of July, but for breeding individuals lasted until the middle of August. The second phase of our research was learning more about Nordmann's greenshank nesting ecology. In 2019 and 2020, we found one nest a pair, but in 2021, we found 4 nests. The nest that we found in 2019 was very similar to that found by Vitaly Andreevich Nechayev on Sakhalin Island, as it was positioned on a large branch on the edge of a large forest fragment and inland bog, approximately 2 kilometers from the intertidal zone. This nest had a full clutch, but unfortunately was depredated by a large-billed crow. In 2020, we discovered a new breeding behavior for the species, as we found that they also nest on the ground underneath a sapling larch. This is also in the hummocky inland bog with many small larches surrounding it, and approximately 1.5 kilometers from the intertidal zone. This nest had a full clutch that successfully produced hatchlings. In 2021, the first, second, and third nests that we found were very similar to that nest that we found in 2020, as they were all on the ground under sapling larches on the hummocky inland bog with very many small larches surrounding it. These nests were anywhere from 1 to 1.4 kilometers from the intertidal zone, and all had full clutches that successfully hatched. The fourth nest of 2021 was unlike any other in that it was at the base of a large tree on the edge of a large forest fragment and inland bog 2 kilometers from the intertidal zone. This nest also had a full clutch that successfully hatched. So from this small study on Nordmann's greenshank nesting ecology, we can make several insights. For one, for the first time, we found the species also nests on mainland Russia, and only on Sakhalin Island. We more than doubled our sample size of Nordmann's greenshank nests known to the scientific community. We also discovered that the species displays nesting plasticity, i.e. it nests on large branches, underneath sapling larches, and at the base of large larches. Of course, this raises many other questions. For example, what are the deciding factors if a Nordmann's greenshank nests in the tree or on the ground? Is it individual or climactic? Is it a coincidence that our only Nordmann's greenshank nest on the tree was depredated by a large-billed crow, but all of our 5 ground nests successfully hatched? Additionally, it raises the question if the population of Nordmann's greenshank is limited by nesting habitat availability. As shown in this drone image, that is 50 meters by 100 meters with our Nordmann's greenshank nest in the center, there is what seems like abundant suitable nesting habitat surrounding just this one little spot. If the Nordmann's greenshank population is not limited by habitat availability, what are the limiting factors, at least on the breeding grounds? The third phase of our research was the capture and banding of adults during the 2019 and 2020 summer breeding seasons. In 2019, we captured 7 individuals, of which 5 returned in 2020. In 2020, unfortunately, our team was reduced in size due to the travel restriction caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thus, we were only able to catch 2 individuals. However, both of these individuals, as well as 4 banded in 2019, were resighted in 2021. We captured birds via mist nets, boneted tables, and bow nets. From this small capture effort, we were able to deduce that Nordmann's greenshanks have a relatively high nest site fidelity. Through both of these years, we're also able to capture chicks. We banded 8 in 2019 and 1 in 2020. Unfortunately, none have been resighted since, indicating that Nordmann's greenshanks have either low natal filipastry or low chick survival. But of course, this is a very small sample size. Throughout the rest of the East Asian Australasian Flyway, as of now, Nordmann's greenshanks have been sighted in Hwaseong, western South Korea, Lianyungang in Taozini in eastern coastal China, Hsinchu in Taiwan, and Sumatra, western Indonesia. The fourth phase of our research was tagging birds with GPS transmitters. We tagged 10 adults with GPS transmitters produced by Druid Technology. These transmitters weighed 3.5 grams each and required a Bluetooth receiver known as a hub to download data at a range of approximately 1.5 to 2 kilometers. From this small study, which the analysis is still ongoing, we can gain several insights about Nordmann's greenshank local movement, as well as their brooding areas. For example, P2 and C2 were both banded on the inland bog by their nest, and with their brood walked from their nest to the edge of the coastal meadow and intertidal mudflat by foot, relatively fast, I should say. From there, P2 went directly north and stayed on the border of this coastal meadow and intertidal mudflat, whereas C2 stayed at the mouth of Silver Creek, where there are many coastal meadow islands surrounded by intertidal mudflat habitat. Thus, we can confirm that the main brood rearing areas for Nordmann's greenshank are coastal meadows and the border of coastal meadow and intertidal mudflat. We were also able to track adults with broods, particularly individuals from the same nest, i.e. a pair. From these studies, we were able to infer that the behaviors of males and females may differ. Although we do not know which individual is which sex, we do know that J2 and J3, which are one pair, were different sexes, one female and one male. And from these tracks, you can infer that one individual was rather tied to its brood, while the other not so much. The fifth portion of our study in Shasti Bay was the survey of key sites. This was the southwest corner as well as the estuaries of Chorna, Avri, and Komil. We conducted these studies during the first weeks of July, when breeding birds came out with their broods and displayed worrying behaviors around what they would perceive as dangers to their brood, i.e. observers. Thus, they were rather easy to monitor. Migrants were also rather easy to monitor at this time, as they would not display the same worrying behaviors, but instead would either quietly forage by themselves or in large groups. We broke up the southwestern corner into two chunks. The first from the Petrovskaya Kosa to base camp, where on the 30th of June, we surveyed 12 pairs or 24 breeding birds consisting of and 80 migrants. The second portion of the southwest corner was from base camp to the Iskar River, where we surveyed a maximum of 90 migrants, or relatively few breeding birds, 2 pairs or 2 individuals. The Chorna River estuary gave us a maximum of 10 to 11 breeding pairs, this is in 2021, consisting of 16 breeding birds, but relatively few migrants, 6 in 2020. The Avri River estuary also gave us relatively few breeding pairs, 2 maximum, but relatively high proportion of migrants, 26 to 30. The Como River estuary gave us a maximum of 15 breeding pairs consisting of 21 breeding birds and a maximum of 28 migrants. From these surveys, we can say that approximately 200 migratory individuals and 35 pairs use Shasti Bay during migration and breeding, which makes up greater than 10% of the world Nordmann's greenshank population and highlights the need to protect Shasti Bay as a protected area, or at least that it qualifies as a Ramsar Island of international importance. We'd also make the conclusion that the East Asian Australasian Flyway Conservation Community should consider creating an international Nordmann's Greenshank task force, which would help protect habitat not only for Nordmann's Greenshanks, but of course, for many other shorebirds throughout the Flyway. This brings us to our second shorebird that we studied in Shastic Bay, common redshanks. Redshanks are ubiquitous throughout Eurasia, and an estimated population between 1 and 3.5 million individuals. They are currently listed as least concern by the IUCN. However, their true population trend is uncertain, with several populations potentially declining. Since East Asian Australasian flyway populations breed on coastal meadows in the remote Russian Far East, no known breeding ecology studies on them have been conducted. In fact, so little is known about East Asian Australasian flyway redshanks that on most range maps they're not listed as breeding birds where we studied them. Now, as a reminder, we conducted the study on the same study site mentioned earlier. And this study site has 5 main habitat types: inland bogs, forest, small rivers and creeks, coastal meadow, and mudflat. On the coastal meadow, where redshanks predominantly nest, although some did nest as well as on the inland bog, but for this study, we chose to ignore those individuals. On the coastal meadow are perceptible changes in elevation that create upland, lowland, and neutral meadow classes. There is also a mosaic of ponds formed by snowmelt, precipitation, and high tide. Unfortunately, there is also a plethora of tracks traversing the coastal meadow, formed during subsistence and recreational activities by the local community when using heavy-duty all-terrain vehicles, locally known as вездеходы. The use of вездеходы happens during the early summer, during the waterfowl hunting season, and midsummer, when locals need to access the coast for fishing. Unfortunately, вездеход paths directly cross our study site as locals move from Vlasovo to the Petrovskaya Kosa. The use of вездеходы also is active during fall, when the habitat is especially vulnerable to changes and disturbances. Unfortunately, this timing coincides with the redshank breeding phenology, particularly territory partitioning and egg laying in early summer, incubating during midsummer, and brooding in late summer. Now, typical ATVs are known to negatively impact local shorebird abundance, incubation behavior, daily nest survival, and hatching success, as well as directly crush nester chicks. This is mostly from studies in Europe and then North America, although no studies on ATV impacts have been conducted in the Russian Far East, at least not in our study site. With this knowledge in mind, we had 2 main objectives. The first was to determine whether meadow classes or landscape variables were related to redshank nest presence. And the second was to assess whether вездеход use may pose a threat to nesting redshanks by associating with those very same landscape variables. To do this, we found nests by walking the coastal meadow and either observing redshanks for nesting activity or flushing birds directly off their nest. Around each nest, we partitioned nesting areas into upland, neutral, or lowland meadow classes. Using drone footage and ArcGIS, we mapped all the different habitat types and imported the layers into R. In R, we then generated background points across the study site and attributed absence values to background points and presence values to nest points. We then calculated the proportional cover area for each landscape feature at different buffer sizes and employed generalized linear models, forward stepwise selection, and AIC scores to identify which models best fit the data. So, results. Throughout the 3 seasons, we found 49 common redshank nests on the coastal meadow. Of these 49, 33 were in upland, 10 in neutral, and 6 in lowland meadow classes. The most supported model assessing nest presence included proportional pond and meadow area, and the most supported model assessing вездеход track prevalence also included proportional forest, pond, meadow, and mudflat area. So what does this mean? By nesting within elevated sections of meadow and away from ponds, redshanks may be establishing territories in areas that do not regularly flood. Vasicoid prevalence was also associated with meadow and away from ponds, likely because vasicoids are least likely to become stuck in contiguous meadow areas and places with low pond cover. What does this mean for East Asian Australasian flyway redshanks? Well, redshanks are nesting around the same landscape features that vasicoid operators steer towards. As such, the use of vasicoids may present an ecological trap for breeding redshanks, with seemingly suitable breeding areas being the same places where birds are most likely to have their nests or chicks crushed, also where habitat quality is significantly lowered as these tracts become waterlogged and unsuitable over an extended period of time. Nevertheless, larger scale studies are necessary. However, in Shasti Bay, it is plausible that vasicoid activity may be a detrimental factor to the local redshank population. How can we mitigate this threat? Banning or limiting the use of vasicoids may be the first thing that comes to mind. However, in reality, bans in the Russian Far East are rarely effective and while highly likely to actually be implemented, although we are doing our best. Thus, a fine-tuned solution must be developed, especially since local communities may often rely on vasicoids, either the heavy-duty type or more lighter types, for subsistence and recreation. One potential action that can be taken is to designate Shasti Bay as a regional nature park, which would legally protect the area for breeding and migrating shorebirds and prohibit unsustainable natural resource extraction, yet allow for limited recreational and subsistence activities. With that, we come to our final conclusion that the Russian Federation and Khabarovsk Krai should consider designating Shasti Bay as a protected area and a Ramsar wetland of international importance. This will help protect Shasti Bay not only for Nordmann's greenshanks, but also help restore populations of other shorebirds in the flyway, as well as such as common redshanks, bar-tailed godwit, eastern curlews, you name it. Great knot. With that, we'd like to thank you for your attention, and we are very thankful for the contributions of the Wildlife Conservation Society, Birds Russia, of course, the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership, who has been absolutely incredible in their work with us, the Florida Cooperative Fish and Wildlife Research Unit at the University of Florida, the Russian Academy of Sciences in Khabarovsk and Vladivostok, WaderQuest, the many Shasti Bay locals that help us throughout our field seasons, and of course, the bird watchers and researchers throughout the East Asian Australasian Flyway, especially coastal China and Korea. And of course, GPS transmitters were produced by the Druid Technology company that were gifted to us via the first annual Shorebird Science meeting. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Philip, for the excellent and really inspiring presentation. Again, if you have questions to Philip, please leave them on at the chat box in the Zoom. And Philip is here today, so he can answer it after our second presentation. So next, I would really like to invite Mr. Iwan Fabrianto. Iwan is co-founder of the EKSAI Foundation in Indonesia, which focusing on the wildlife conservation and currently focusing on the shorebirds conservation in Indonesia. He is also leading the Far Eastern Curlew project in Indonesia in recent years. So Iwan, over to you. Iwan, maybe you can share, you can unmute yourself and I'll put you as the spotlight. Please let us know if you need help for sharing the screen. Maybe we can have Rajil to help you to share the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I think you need help.
Rachel, do you think you can help sharing the screen of the PowerPoint, please?
Yes, okay.
Okay, guys. Okay, is okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Over to you. Thanks.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Iwan Febrianto. This is from EKSAI Foundation, Indonesia. And I want to share about the conservation and monitoring Far Eastern Curlew in Indonesia, especially in Sumatra. That's why for Far Eastern Curlew is one important bird in East Asian Australasian Flyway, and endangered species always trend in every year in decreasing in AIF. That's a main goal, conserve to stop over in non-breeding habitat migratory shorebird, include Far Eastern Curlew, and improving local capacity building, involving local stakeholder for sustainable research. That's our work. We start from 2019. We do survey Far Eastern Curlew and workshop in Jambi province in Sumatran Island, Indonesia. And 2020, survey for identify the important site for Far Eastern Curlew in Sumatran Island. And this year, we hope we got a long-term monitoring for Far Eastern Curlew with local people. There's a short bird and picture of Far Eastern Curlew. We identify the species. Number of species is 32, and maximum count in 70,032. And maximum count of Far Eastern Curlew is 36. That's our work in 2019 with the local government and Department of Forestry in Jambi. All participants from study from campus, stakeholder, and managing migratory shorebird, Far Eastern Curlew, and prioritizing the shorebird during development process. Yes, we need share to local government, and we also invite David Lee from Singapore to talk about the manage the area. This is a picture of a site. We set first site in Banyuasin Peninsula in Berbak and Sembilang National Park, Palembang, South Sumatra Province, and second in Pantai Cemara or Sungai Cemara Village, Jambi Province, and the third is in Pantai Muara Serdang, Deli Serdang, North Sumatra Province. This maximum or count about 3 species endangered in 3 sites. We in the first site we total species, the number is only 13, but maximum count is 20,059 individual. And second site is 29, but maximum count only 2,817. In site 3, 23 and 2,622. In site 1, we not got seen spotted greenshank, but we got we see great knout and Far Eastern Curlew. In site 2, we got spotted greenshank, great knout and Far Eastern Curlew. In site 3, we still got spotted greenshank, great knout and Far Eastern Curlew. That's a number every site. In site 1, we got 210, but Far Eastern Curlew. But not one we seen spotted greenshank. In site 2, only 35. But we seen 21 spotted greenshank in this area. In site 3, we seen 26 of Far Eastern Curlew. Yeah, this 2020, we survey important site Far Eastern Curlew in Sumatran Island result. We in site 1, it's a mud flat and a protected area. We see a big number of curlew, almost maybe 500 more curlew. This a picture of site 1. Yeah, this picture in site 2. We still survey for identify the important site for Far Eastern Curlew. There's a not big number, but we still seen Far Eastern Curlew in this site. Yeah, in the survey for identify still in Sumatra, in North Sumatra, and in site 3, we see Far Eastern Curlew with a green flag, but we still confused. I confirm with Joris in East Asian Australasian Flyway. Maybe one of flag is gone, but we still need. I don't know. The bird came from where? Maybe the participant know that information. It's the problem. It's in site 3, the hunting treat about the shorebird. It's in Sumatran Island. It's the fishermen, but in big wave, they're not going to the sea, and the catch shorebird. But almost we seen a small bird like a greater sunflower, and I hope we do not catch a Far Eastern Curlew. There's in site 2, we see the potential invasive vegetation species like Ipomea. We see maybe 20% of open area now is closed by vegetation, and we not see the big or medium bird, shorebird in this area. Only small bird like sandpiper or caradrius. There's a capacity building and advocacy discussion in site 1. The picture we discussed it with the chief of national park in Berbak Sembilang and the local people whose local people live in national park. There's in site 2, we try to build local people to identify shorebird, especially for spotted greenshank or Far Eastern Curlew, because like a spotted greenshank is not easy to identify, same like greenshank. So we need to develop and we need practice for the local people. Just capacity building and advocacy in the site too. Discussion with the representative of Sungai Cemara village with apparatus. Discussing with the acting region of Tanjung Jabung Timur and representative relevant department forestry environment in Jambi province. Acknowledgement, we also thanks to the government of South of Korea and government of Hwasong City and East ASEAN Australasian Flyway Partnership, Asian Waterbird Conservation Fund, Japan ASEAN Integrated Fund for supporting our project for Far Eastern Curlew. We also thanks to Ministry of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia, including BKSDA, like BKSDA, what's meaning? Like agency, forestry agency. It's a local government in Jambi and Berbak Sembilang National Park and local stakeholder. And who always help and support us during our project. What to do the next? We continue the survey to get comprehensive data of Far Eastern Curlew in its identified site. Survey identify the important site for Far Eastern Curlew in Borneo, Java, and Papua because we got several notes of sighting and satellite tracking on those locations, but we was no Far Eastern Curlew focus survey on those sites yet. Track the migratory route of Far Eastern Curlew species, which stop in Indonesia by doing a flag and satellite tracking bending. And the last, awareness and capacity building activity for local people and local stakeholder, and actively involving them in Far Eastern Curlew conservation activities. And thank you. That's not good for me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Iwan, for the inspiring presentation. And I'm happy to see that there are linkage between the two speakers. Like we have Philip talking about Nordmann's Greenshank in the breeding sites, and you also spot the Nordmann's Greenshank in the wintering ground in your study site in Indonesia. So yeah, that's really great. And yeah, I would like to now invite our speakers to turn on their webcam and turn on their mic. So Philip, please, you can also share your webcam, and as well as Rajul to help with the facilitation for the interpretation. And I would also welcome people to keep on writing your questions and raise hands if you like, if you want to ask the questions. So, all right, let's see if we have Philip's here, Iwan and Rajul's here, so that's good. All right, so maybe I can ask the first questions raised in the chat box. That is from Chris to Philip. It's also a comment, maybe. He's said the low return rates in the first 2 years after abandoning maybe due to the immature stays in non-breeding sites to mature and don't return to the breeding breeding ground for 2 or 3 years. So it's kind of like many other species. So for this, Philip, do you have any feedback on this questions to you?
No, Chris, that's an excellent comment. We've been doing this project for 3 years now, so maybe next year we plan to return in summer of 2022. So hopefully we get some good resites and give some weight to this hypothesis. Absolutely, that'd be great.
Okay, that's a quick answer. And okay, thank you, Philip. And then another questions also to you. It's a great talk. And how do you differ breeding and migrant birds? I think it's like how to differentiate by the appearance.
No, yeah, thank you for the question, Anton. In Shasta Bay it's a particular period where the breeding birds they have a very distinguishing behavior. They observe, or they watch for observers or any other disturbance such as aerial predators, and they mob that perceived threat. So if for when we get close to any sort of breeding birds, they instantly start yelling at us and running circles around us. And it's really obvious to tell that these birds are tied to the area and have some interest there, i.e. a brood. Because when we leave the area, when we walk, simply 50, 100 meters more, the birds stay in that area and no longer yell at us. Whereas migratory birds, they are usually in larger groups and silent. So you can see, 90 greenshanks off foraging all quietly and together, and not really paying any attention to us as observers.
Okay, that's very interesting. You differentiate by their behavior.
Right, and that's why we do these surveys in the beginning of July, when there are both breeding birds and migrants. Otherwise, it'd be very difficult to tell.
Okay, that's great information. Thank you, Philip. And another statement is also to Iwan. It's from Yana. Thank you for the great work and the presentation. The rangers who were trained in 2020 will be precious human resources for this year work. So it's kind of hoping to like this work will be continuing, and you will have more new trained person to help with the survey. And yeah, so that is. Thank you for showing the next step too. And okay, so may I ask, Iwan, you actually have a question to Philip. Maybe you can ask him in person. Iwan, please unmute. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, Philip.
Hello.
Maybe maybe 3 years ago, I've been a wet-headed still chick in the age maybe 3 weeks. How about Nordmann Greenshank? How it's to bend the chick? Okay, that's it.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Maybe Ragil, can you help me? Umur berapa bending chick untuk Nordmann Greenshank?
Yang ideal ya, Mas ya?
Iya.
Okay.
Kan pakai cincin normal harus normal kan, sudah besar kan.
Okay, Philip, Iwan's question is, what is the suitable age for Nordmann Greenshank chick to be ringed? So how old is Nordmann Greenshank can be ringed with the normal
Size, normal size.
Sure. Well, of course, as you know, these chicks are precocial, so we put on a metal band and a red ring right when they hatch. If we're lucky enough to catch them in the nest, then we hatch them or band them immediately. Or if we are able to catch them later when they're on the coastal meadow. But yeah, you usually right when they hatch. Otherwise, adults, it's either their first, second, third year out there, so they're already fully grown enough for the rings and the flags and the metal band as well. So yeah, pretty much immediately is the short answer, is when we band the chicks.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you. Iwan, do you have further questions?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell the Philip, in my side in 3 is a huge number of Nordmann Greenshank, maybe in 55 Nordmann Greenshank in North Sumatra.
That's excellent.
I hope next we catch Nordmann Greenshank again.
That'd be great. That'd be absolutely great.
Okay. We also have a new question from Deng Li. This is questions to Iwan. Do you think Far Eastern Curlew number at your site has declined since the old surveys in the 1990s? Any ideas on the trends? Yeah, Rachel, maybe you can help if needed.
Mas Iwan?
Ya.
Pertanyaan dari Ding Liong, apakah Mas Iwan berpikir bahwa angka Far Eastern Curlew di site-site yang dikerjakan menurun sejak survei yang terlama kurang lebih di tahun 90-an? Apakah ada ide atau masukan atau ide dalam trennya, tren populasinya apakah menurun atau bagaimana di site-site tersebut?
Kemungkinan besar menurun. Terus kalau ide-idenya karena ini ya alih fungsi lahan. Terus idenya kita harus ini ke lokal masyarakat seperti untuk awareness gitu aja. Oh, Gil.
Yeah, so Iwan think that the number is declining, and the most important action beside doing monitoring also give an education and awareness to the local people, because most of the habitat for shorebird sub-offer in Indonesia, especially in Sumatra, in our sites, are not protected except the national park. So the education and awareness to local people is very important. I think that, and I may want to add another information too about the trend. So our co-founder, Mr. Cipto Dwihandono, together with Muhammad Iqbal, already make a publication about the Far Eastern Curlew in our first site, the Banyuasin Peninsula, the Berbak Sembilang National Park, in Berbak Sembilang National Park, and it shows the trend of the population on that side, same with the global trend. So it's declining. I can share the paper, I think, on the chat box if everyone wants to read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Iwan and Rachel. And yeah, please leave the link in on the chat box. So I think there is no more questions.
I believe Jimmy had a question previously. Okay. That was I'll just read it and answer it.
Mm-hmm.
He was asking if there are any other shorebird species known to nest in trees, and he was also wondering how hatched shorebird chicks get to the ground. Jimmy, that's an excellent question. There are two other shorebird species that we know of that nest in trees, the green and solitary sandpipers, both Tringa species, but they occupy old robin nests or thrush nests, whereas the greenshanks are thought of to be the only shorebirds to actually build their own trees instead of occupying a previous structure. And how the chicks get down from the trees, we think they just jump, kind of like ducks do from cavities. The tree nest that we found was depredated, so we unfortunately didn't have the chance to observe any hatching events, and all the other nests that we found have been on the ground. And Vitaly Andreevich Nechayev, who studied them on Sakhalin Island in 1976, was also unable to observe how they actually got from the nest to the ground. So we hypothesized they just simply jump.
Thank you, Philip. I missed Jimmy's questions. Sorry, Jimmy. We have I think we have last questions from Andy. That is to Iwan and Rajil. Did you set up any reporting system so that local people can enter their sightings or photos to an online platform, in particular the people whom you trained?
Oke, Mas Iwan, Angie tanya, apakah Anda men-setting sistem pelaporan untuk local people, jadi local people yang sudah jadi tim survei itu apakah memiliki sistem untuk melapor data-data pengamatan mereka atau foto-foto yang mereka dapatkan ke platform online untuk orang-orang yang sudah kita training?
Selama ini hanya ke kita aja sih untuk pelaporan itu, dan masih tetap kita training gitu loh.
Okay. So actually they continuously reporting to us, but we didn't have like a specific system or reporting system or online reporting system for them because their location is not accessible with the internet access. So they will send us the picture and the reporting of their survey and monitoring when they get an internet access or they are in a location with the internet signal, because the location is pretty far away from the city and they don't have our lacks of internet signal. So they will send the report of their sighting, maybe like once a month or once in several months. I think like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajil, for the information. Yeah, just realize that there are difficulties of the transfer of the information due to the limit of the internet in the rural area. So yeah, maybe that can be something to think about how to overcome this in the future, providing
Actually, after we did a survey in 2019 and talked to the local government about this, they are in the progress to develop the facility of the village, and electricity just entered the village in 2020. The electricity just entered the village in 2020, and from our advocation last year with the acting region of Tanjung Jabung Timur, they commit to build a signal tower, so the internet signal should be can accessible in that area, and hopefully all the plan are goes well. Due to COVID, sometimes they will cut the budget, but we hope everything can goes as it planned.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And I also learned that the team also have good relationship with the local government. So hopefully the needs will be heard and supported by the governments, and then you will get more support with the trained people for the field work and also the devices. Okay, so did I miss any questions? Please let me know or raise your hands if I missed anything. Seems we cover all the questions. So thank you once again for the excellent presentation from Philipp and Iwan. And yeah, I think lastly, we wanted to announce a few things for the World Migratory Bird Day. May I invite Sewon to help to share the screen for the last 2 slides? Okay, so yeah, tomorrow is the World Migratory Bird Day. It is a Saturday, and maybe some of you or like due to the lockdown, you cannot go out. So here is the family activities for you. We have a puppet show, The Boy with Wings from BirdLife Productions, based in New Zealand. And they are presenting their puppet show about the journey of a boy and the bar-tailed godwit. And it is a really limited seats, and we are not going to live stream it. So please register to join the puppet show tomorrow at 3 p.m. Korean time. And then next slide, please. Yeah, this is a new version of the World Migratory Birthday poster, and you can find different languages, 13 languages we translated on the EAFP website. So please help us to distribute and deliver the message to your friends and your network about the World Migratory Birthday tomorrow. And lastly, the last slide, please. Yeah, so actually Philipp's project was funded, part of the project was supported by the EAFP Small Grant Fund for Working Group and Task Force. And we are calling for proposal every year, January, February time. So please stay tuned with us. Follow our social media at EAAFP, and then get all the updates of the Small Grant Fund announcement and other activities. So at the end, this is the end of the webinar. Thank you very much for everyone to joining us, and happy World Migratory Bird Day tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.